A family story from Vermont. I set the last fork beside the plate. The warm scent of roasted turkey drifted through the dining room. Across from me sat my children, Amy, driven and restless, and Ethan, quieter but always at her side. All I wanted was peace, just one honest conversation. So I asked if they meant to repay the money I'd given them. Amy's smile tightened. Her voice cut through the air. If you keep bringing this up, we'll cut ties with you. The words struck harder than any slap. Cut me off? Their own mother? My chest tightened, my hand trembled as I steadied the napkin. Ethan just looked away, and in that silence something inside me broke and hardened. But when I laid the cream-colored envelope on the table, its weight made them the ones trembling now. I'm Linda Dawson, 72, a retired school secretary from Vermont. Tonight at my own Thanksgiving table, my children told me I was nothing to them. Subscribe if you like this kind of story. 6 months ago, sunlight spilling through my kitchen window in Vermont. The kettle whistled low, and I had just set 3 teacups on the table when the door opened. Amy walked in, caramel-colored coat, manicured nails, her new phone glowing in her hand. She gave me a quick hug, more out of habit than warmth, and placed an iPad on the table, her eyes shining with excitement. Mom, I've got something amazing. A real opportunity, she swiped through glossy slides filled with wedding photos and elegant decor. An all-inclusive event planning service. I've already got 2 couples lined up. All I need is upfront capital to secure the venue and buy equipment. If I pay this week, I get a 30% discount on the deposit. Ethan followed her in, silent, hands buried in his jacket pockets. He sat down, avoiding my eyes. Don't worry, Mom. I'll handle the finances. We can open a joint account. It'll make everything easier. Safe. As he spoke, his phone lit up. I caught a glimpse. Lease approved. Congratulations. He flipped it over quickly and smiled. Just a small thing, nothing important. I studied Amy. I remembered when she used to pinch pieces of bread into little hearts and leave them on my plate. Now her eyes still sparkled, but not with tenderness. There was urgency, almost desperation behind the shine. She slid a folder across the table, an LLC packet, pages of dense print. At the top, the effective date was crossed out, replaced with a handwritten word, pending. Amy smiled, smoothing the edge. Lawyers are so slow, Mom. But we can't wait around. We start now and tidy up the paperwork later. I touched the corner of the folder. Shouldn't Catherine, my lawyer, look this over first? Amy laughed lightly with an edge. Oh, Mom, come on. We're not building an empire here. Catherine will just drag things out and add fees. This is family. Family doesn't need contracts to trust each other. She leaned closer, placing her hand over mine. You always taught me, family helps family. Ethan nodded, his tone flat. I'll act as trustee for tax purposes. You'll just be a silent partner. It's clean and safe. The documents looked polished, almost too polished. Numbers rounded neatly, one supplier's name misspelled. That word pending snagged in my mind like grit in a bowl of rice. But then I looked into Amy's eyes, the same eyes that once sparkled with pride when she brought home an A in English. I swallowed. So, how much do you need? Amy answered without hesitation. 60,000. With 60, we can really take off. The kettle hissed softly. I reached to straighten a framed photo of Harold on the shelf, his smile frozen in the snow by the lake. The hook slipped loose. The frame fell. Crack. A thin line splintered diagonally across his face. Amy froze for half a second, then forced a laugh. Oh, bad luck. Or maybe it's the universe telling us change is coming. A sign we're about to take off, Mom? The universe? I echoed, my voice thread thin. I opened my laptop. The bank screen reflected a face older than I'd realized. The cursor blinked in the box marked Amount. Memories crowded in, selling Harold's old piano to pay Amy's first semester tuition, climbing a ladder alone last winter to knock ice from the roof, while Amy texted she was too busy with VIP tasting and never showed up. Postponing my dental appointment to cover the furnace repair. No one asked if I was tired. No one noticed. I thought of Lisa, my granddaughter, hugging me tight, asking about my carrots in the garden, smiling at the postcards I sent. I thought of the words I'd repeated for years. Family helps family. They stuck like an old vow. I typed 60,000, pressed enter. Ethan exhaled in relief, flipping his phone face down. Amy leaned in and kissed my cheek. "Mom, I knew you'd understand." I didn't answer. My eyes drifted back to Harold's picture, the white crack cutting across his face, catching the sunlight. Inside, it wasn't regret exactly, more like someone had dropped a heavy stone into the well of my chest. Back then, I didn't see it. I didn't understand that it wasn't just paperwork marked pending. The real storm was pending too, waiting just outside my door, ready to break open the moment I turned away. These days, my life is simple. A small clapboard house sits at the edge of town, its roof sloping under the weight of Vermont seasons. In autumn, the garden out back turns copper and gold. I rake leaves slowly, pile them into neat mounds, and sometimes catch myself humming old school songs from when I worked as a secretary. 40 years of keeping schedules straight, typing memos, remembering details that no one else cared about. Not a glamorous career, but an honest one. I never had much money, not really. Harold and I lived carefully, always saving a little extra, always thinking about later. He used to tease me. "You could find a silver lining in a thunderstorm, Linda." Maybe he was right. I grew used to small joys. A hot cup of tea, the smell of my peonies in June, the satisfaction of balancing the checkbook down to the penny. And now, at 71, I have my modest pension, a bit of savings, and a roof that stays warm in winter. It's not wealth, but it's enough. Enough to live decently, enough to feel safe, enough to believe I had done things right. But the greatest joy of all, the one that warmed me more than any pension check, was being needed. When Amy called asking, "Mom, could you help?" Or when Ethan sighed, "Mom, I don't know what to do." A part of me lit up inside. After Harold passed, after the nights got longer and lonelier, those moments gave me purpose, to be useful, to be the steady hand my children could lean on. I never thought that would be the very thing I'd regret. Sometimes I sit at the kitchen table and watch the garden sway. I remind myself that I raised 2 children on discipline and love. I taught them kindness, honesty, and the value of hard work. I still want to believe that. And yet, lately, when Amy smiles too brightly or Ethan avoids my eyes, something uneasy shifts in me. A whisper I try to ignore. Are they leaning on me or standing on me? I tell myself it's just the loneliness talking. I tell myself family always means trust. I sip my tea, look at Harold's picture, and whisper, "Family helps family." That's what we always said. I cling to that phrase like a life raft. I don't know yet that it's the very rope being used to pull me under. For a little while, I let myself believe I had done the right thing. Amy sent me pictures, shiny white tablecloths, flower arrangements in tall glass vases, a string of lights draped across a rented hall. "First client event booked, Mom," she wrote, adding a row of heart emojis. Ethan forwarded an email with numbers that looked promising, neat columns of figures ending in green. "We're on track," he said, though his voice on the phone always sounded distant, like he was reading lines instead of speaking truth. I didn't question it. Not then. The first week after transferring the money, I walked through my garden with a lightness in my chest. I bent down to pull weeds from the carrot patch and thought, I'm still building something. My knees ached, but my heart felt young. Helping my children meant I still had purpose. I wasn't just an old widow with too much time and too little company. I was a partner, an investor, a mother still holding the family together. One evening, Amy called, her voice full of excitement. "Mom, you should have seen it tonight." The couple was thrilled. They said our service felt so professional. "We couldn't have done it without you." I smiled into the receiver, warmth spreading through me. "I'm glad, sweetheart. That's all I ever wanted, for you to succeed." But underneath the glow of pride, there were moments that caught me, like when Amy mentioned ordering a new set of chairs for the business, and I heard the faint clink of champagne glasses behind her, the hum of a crowded restaurant. Or when Ethan emailed me quarterly projections, but stumbled when I asked what the actual revenue was. Small things, easy to brush aside. I told myself, they're busy, they're working hard. Don't be suspicious, Linda. I pushed away the memory of the cracked photo frame on my kitchen floor. Harold's smile split down the middle. I told myself it was just an accident. Months slipped by, and silence grew louder than any reassurance. I checked my phone every morning, expecting an update from Amy or Ethan, numbers, contracts, photos. Nothing. Just the occasional emoji-filled message from Amy. "Busy week. Don't worry. Finally, I called. Amy, how's everything going with the business? She hesitated, then laughed lightly. We're just restructuring, Mom. You know how startups are. 1 step back, 2 steps forward. Restructuring? I pressed. But it's only been a few weeks. Trust me, Mom. It's all part of the plan. Her voice was a shade too bright, like stage lights hiding shadows. I called Ethan later that day. Your sister tells me you're restructuring? What does that mean? He paused. Yeah. Well, market conditions. We're adjusting. His words stumbled like stones in a stream. Then, anyway, I've got to run. And the line went dead. Days turned into weeks. My bank statement arrived. No activity, no deposits, no signs of clients. Just the cold reminder of $60,000 gone. One chilly afternoon, I was kneeling in the garden, tugging dead stalks from the earth, when my phone buzzed. A message from my old colleague, Marjorie. Linda, is this your daughter's company? Just saw the notice online attached was a link. I wiped the dirt from my gloves and tapped it open. The page loaded slowly and the gray sky above me mirrored on the screen. There it was. Articles of dissolution, Aventura Planning, LLC, filed 3 months ago. 3 months. I blinked at the words until they blurred. My breath misted in the cold air. 3 months ago. That was before Amy showed me glossy slides, before Ethan promised tidy finances, before I wired the money. The rake slipped from my hand, clattering against the frozen ground. I stared at the screen again, dissolved, filed, official, not pending, not restructuring, dead. For a moment I thought I might faint right there among the brittle stems. My knees dug into the soil, and a sharp stone pressed into my palm. 3 months. They knew. They knew it was already gone when they asked me for everything I had. I sat back on my heels, heart hammering. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't an investor. I was a fool. A fool who had trusted too much, who had handed over her life savings for a company that didn't even exist anymore. And in that instant, the garden around me seemed to tilt, the world spinning with the weight of a truth I had tried not to see. The cracks weren't coming. They were already here. The sign outside said Grand Opening, its red letters flapping in the breeze. Through the glass, I saw rows of 12 leather pedicure chairs, still shining, lined up like soldiers. A brand new neon sign glowed in the corner. A&A Nails. I stepped inside. The sharp smell of acetone mixed with fresh paint. Amy appeared from the back, her hair in a sleek bun, earrings sparkling under the lights. She smiled as if this were any other visit. Mom, you came? Isn't it beautiful? I looked around the spotless salon. It's big. Must have cost a fortune. Where did the money come from, Amy? She shrugged too casually. Just capital rotation, I figured out a way. Don't worry about it. Show me, I said quietly. Her smile faltered. She reached under the counter, pulled out a clear file holder, and slid a stack of invoices toward me. The paper still smelled of ink. I flipped through them. $18,000 for a lease deposit. Marked paid in full, wire transfer. The next line made my stomach clench. $23,988 for 12 leather pedicure chairs. The payment note even showed the exact reference number, the same transfer I had made, $60,000 gone in one click. $4,800 for lighting and a glowing neon sign. Paid. $3,450 for supplies. Paid. And at the very bottom, a final line. Personal transfer. $7,500. Completed. My finger pressed against that last line. What's this personal transfer of $7,500? Amy fiddled with her earring, eyes sliding away. Miscellaneous expenses. You know how openings go. Everything adds up through the glass door. A silver SUV pulled up. Temporary tags are still taped to the bumper. Ethan stepped out, new jacket, polished shoes. He froze when he saw me. Oh, Mom. Didn't know you'd be here. I pointed to the car. Is that yours? Lease, he said quickly. $799 a month. It's just presentation, Mom. Clients expect professionalism. I held up the invoice. Does your lease fall under personal transfer too? Ethan shoved his hands deeper in his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. You're twisting things. Businesses require upfront investment. You wouldn't understand. I turned back to Amy. Since when is the business a nail salon, Amy? You dissolved your event company 3 months ago, yet you told me you were restructuring. Why? She braced herself against the counter, jaw tight. Because, Mom, the market was collapsing. Events weren't working. I pivoted to something safer. Cash flow. Nails always bring money. That's not lying, that's adapting. In my chest, the words rose unspoken. Changing the label doesn't change what you did. Ethan tried again, his voice softer. Mom, we're doing our best. We just need time. I'm not asking about time. My voice shook, but not from fear. I'm asking about honesty. The room went still. The buzz of a nail drill hummed faintly from the back, and a young employee glanced up before quickly bowing her head again. Amy exhaled sharply, palms slapping flat on the counter. Fine. You want the truth? That money, you gave it to us. $60,000. No contract, no loan agreement. You pressed the button, Mom. You chose. That's not a loan. That's a gift. Her words landed like a blade. Inside me, an answer formed, but I couldn't force it past my lips. I gave, yes, but I gave for your honesty, not for you to turn deceit into strategy. I closed the invoices carefully and placed them back in the file. Ethan shifted, edging toward the door, his silence heavier than any words. No apology, no regret, just the cold certainty of people who believed they were right. I looked one last time around the salon, those gleaming chairs, the bright sign, the tidy price list on the wall. Everything looked polished, perfect as if no lie had been told here. Outside, the wind rattled the grand opening banner against the glass. In my mind, questions beat against me like that banner. When did you stop asking if I was tired? When did Mom become silent partner? When did your eyes change? From love to calculation? Maybe I should have seen it sooner. The time Amy never came to help with the icy roof. The way she cut me off whenever I mentioned Catherine. The word pending on that contract I told myself was nothing. I turned to leave, my voice low, steady. At least now I know where my money went. Something inside me fell quiet then, heavy as a stone sinking into deep water. Behind me, Amy's voice called out, cool as steel. In this world, Mom, everyone has to fend for themselves. And in my heart I whispered back, yes, even from their own children. I held the invoices in my hands, the numbers glaring back at me. 18,000, 23,000, 7,500. My chest tightened. $60,000. Just like that. And suddenly the paper blurred and I was somewhere else. I was back in our old kitchen, the yellow light dim, the table scarred from years of use. Harold had just come home from a night shift at the plant, tired but smiling, laying a wrinkled paycheck on the table. $215. We sat together, deciding which bill to pay first. The mortgage, the overdue gas, or the children's school supplies. Every choice felt like a sacrifice. I remember the joy we felt the first time we managed to save $1,000. A whole thousand. Our rainy day fund. It had taken nearly a year to put it aside, penny by penny. And now, one line on this invoice in my hand was worth more than that entire year of struggle. I thought of the sacrifices. The time I sold the old piano Harold gave me so Amy could pay her college tuition. $2,300 I handed over without hesitation. When Ethan was 12, I patched up his frayed coat sleeve because we couldn't afford a new one. Back then, my love was measured in small concrete acts, things given quietly without complaint. And Amy, my sweet Amy, she once scribbled in her little notebook, "When I grow up, I'll buy Mom a big house." I can still see her crooked handwriting, but today those same lips told me, "That money was a gift, Mom." Not a loan. The contrast struck me like a blow. Then and now, promise and betrayal. I remembered nights alone at the kitchen table, Harold asleep, the children in bed, while I stared at the bills, trying to figure out where I could find an extra $65 for the electric bill. Back then, I feared poverty. I feared losing the lights, losing the house. But now the fear was different. I wasn't afraid of being poor. I was afraid of being nothing but a fool in my own children's eyes, afraid of being used up until there was nothing left. And in that moment, I understood something that cut deeper than any unpaid bill ever did. Poverty never broke me. Betrayal just might. All those years, I thought unconditional sacrifice would teach my children love. Instead, I had shown them how easy it was to take. The next morning, I folded the invoices into a neat stack and slid them into my old leather purse. My hands shook as I buttoned the flap shut, not from age, but from the weight of what they meant. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't heading to my garden or to church or even to Amy's salon. I was heading downtown to the office of Catherine Blake, a lawyer I'd heard about at the senior center. They said she fought for people like me, older folks, often tricked, often left voiceless. Her office was simple, lined with oak shelves and case files. She greeted me firmly, not with pity, but with focus. "Mrs. Harris," she said, "tell me everything." So I did. The 60,000, the company that never existed, the salon, the SUV, and then, almost whispering, Amy's words. "That money was a gift, Mom." "Not a loan," Catherine leaned back, steepling her fingers. "First, let's establish this. Gifts and loans, legally, they are not the same. Without a written agreement, your children will claim it was voluntary. That makes recovery difficult, but not impossible." My chest tightened. "So I can't get it back?" Her gaze was steady. "Not without proof." "But, Mrs. Harris, there's something stronger here than contracts. There's intent. If we can show they deceived you, asking for funds under false pretenses, then it edges into fraud. That matters, fraud." The word cracked through the room like thunder. "My children? Fraudulent?" Catherine slid the invoices back toward me, tapping the line marked personal transfer, $7,500. "This right here, personal expenses disguised as business costs. That's evidence. Combine that with the timing of the dissolution of Amy's company, 3 months before she asked you for money, and we begin to see a pattern." A pattern. I swallowed hard. It felt strange, hearing the truth spoken aloud by a stranger, when I'd been avoiding it inside my own mind. "Mrs. Harris," Catherine continued, her voice softer now, "you're not the first parent to sit in that chair with tears in her eyes, wondering how her children could do this. But the law exists for this very reason, to protect the vulnerable, to hold even family accountable." Her words struck me in 2 places at once, relief that someone saw what I saw, and grief that it had come to this. I left her office into the crisp afternoon air, clutching her business card like it was a lifeline. On the back, she had scribbled in firm handwriting, "Document everything. Every text, every transfer. Don't confront them alone." I walked to the bus stop, her advice echoing in my ears. Document everything. Don't confront them alone. But in my heart, a quiet ache asked the question no lawyer could answer. When did my children become people I needed protection from? The invoices still weighed in my purse like stones when I walked into the small office of Catherine Blake, attorney at law. Her nameplate on the door carried the words, "Elder Advocacy, Protecting Seniors from Exploitation." Catherine was in her early 50s, calm but sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who'd seen every trick in the book and didn't flinch easily. She motioned for me to sit, her desk tidy, files neatly stacked, a cup of untouched coffee cooling by her elbow. "Tell me everything," she said gently. So I did. I laid out the invoices, the bank transfers, and the texts from Amy and Ethan. I told her about the dissolved company, the nail salon, and the SUV. As I spoke, the weight in my chest pressed harder. By the end, I was twisting my hands together like a girl caught cheating, even though I was the one betrayed. Catherine studied the papers in silence, tapping her pen lightly. Then she looked at me, steady and direct. "Mrs. Dawson, this is financial exploitation? Plain and simple?" The words cut through the fog. Financial exploitation. A term cold and clinical, but truer than anything I had dared name aloud. She went on, clear and precise. "The fact that the company was dissolved months before they asked for your money, that alone shows deception. And using those funds for personal gain? That's not a business investment. That's misrepresentation. We can file for restitution, possibly even pursue charges if you want to go that route." I swallowed hard. Charges. The thought of seeing Amy and Ethan in a courtroom made my stomach twist. They were my children, my flesh and blood. Catherine's voice softened as if she could read my hesitation. "Listen, this isn't about punishing them. It's about protecting you. Right now, they believe there are no consequences. That's dangerous, not just for your finances, but for your dignity." Her words lingered. My dignity. I thought of Harold, of those long nights balancing bills, of the pride he always carried even when money was tight. He never begged, never bent his back lower than it had to go. What would he say now, seeing me sit here, robbed by my own children? I sat straighter. What do I need to do? Catherine leaned forward, pushing a folder toward me. Inside were documents, power of attorney options, fraud reporting resources, and steps to freeze future transfers. We'll start by securing your accounts, she said. No more wire transfers without your consent in writing. And if they come knocking for more, you have a legal boundary. If they ignore it, we act. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope, not yet, but resolve. I closed the folder, my hands steady now. Thank you. I've spent my whole life protecting them. Maybe it's time I finally protect myself. As I stood to leave, Catherine gave a small nod, her voice quiet but firm. You're not alone anymore, Linda. Don't forget that. Outside, the autumn air bit at my cheeks, sharp and bracing. The world hadn't changed, but I had. For the first time since the betrayal, I wasn't just a grieving mother or a gullible widow. I was a woman with a choice, and I had just made it. 10 days before Thanksgiving, the calls thinned to a polite, practiced cheerfulness. A few quick texts, and occasioned, "How are you, Mom?" as if the last few weeks had never happened. 5 days out, Amy left a voicemail about flowers and floor plans. Ethan sent a canned thumbs-up emoji after a short, awkward conversation. They sounded rehearsed, convinced I was still the same soft, forgiving woman they could gently bend. But I wasn't. Not anymore. 3 mornings before the holiday, I woke before dawn. The sky was a pale wash of blue, and the air had that clean, bitter snap of November. I put the kettle on, took the time to sweep the crumbs from the kitchen floor, and wiped the counter until it gleamed. Small rituals steadied me, folding a dish towel just so, lining my measuring cups in order, setting the radio low to an old Sinatra record while the house slowly brightened. There was an ease to it, deliberate, slow, the kind of quiet that comes from having decided something difficult and finally letting your hands do the work. On the morning of Thanksgiving itself, I rolled out the crust as the sun climbed, letting the butter keep its cool so the pastry would flake. I roasted the pumpkin until the fork slid through the flesh, then spooned the flesh into a bowl and stirred in brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, and a pinch of clove until the fragrance filled every corner of the kitchen. The familiar aroma felt like a warm shawl around my shoulders, comforting, steady, reassuring in a way money never had. My hands moved with the ease of habit. My heartbeat, though, held a new clarity. While the pie baked and the house filled with that warm spice, I slipped a cream-colored envelope into my apron pocket. The letter inside was short and spare, clear, factual, and written with Catherine's steady hand. It listed the $60,000 transfer, the dissolution record, the invoices, not a litany of anger, but a ledger of truth. It stated a boundary plainly. No more automatic bailouts, no more silent suffering. Any further pressure, any more attempts to use my love as leverage, would be met with law rather than tears. As I set the table, polishing the silver until the spoons caught the light, folding napkins into precise triangles, placing the linen just so, I caught my reflection in the dark window pane. For the first time since Harold died, the woman looking back at me appeared composed and resolved. Not triumphant, not gleeful, simply steady. The turkey browned in the oven, steam fogged the windows, and the pie cooled on the counter, its surface taut and glossy. Candlelight would soon shimmer across the tablecloth. To a neighbor peeking in, it would have looked like any other warm, well-loved Thanksgiving spread. But I knew this was no ordinary meal. This was the stage. Tonight, while my children still believed me gentle and pliable, I planned to reveal the quiet strength I had forged. A mother who had nothing left to lose and, finally, everything worth protecting. The dining room shimmered with candlelight, the table set as though nothing in the world was wrong. Amy smiled too brightly as she filled her glass. "Mom, this turkey is perfect." "You always know how to make it special," I nodded. "It's tradition." Ethan kept chewing quietly, eyes locked on his plate. Not once did he meet mine. We spoke of recipes, neighbors, and the weather. Their words skimmed the surface like stones, never touching depth. Then I put my fork down. A small sound, but it cracked the air. "We need to talk about the $60,000, I said softly. "How and when you'll return it." Amy's smile held for a moment, stiff as porcelain. "Mom, really? Tonight? Let's just enjoy the evening." "I am enjoying it," I said, "but honesty matters more than cranberry sauce. This is your chance. Your last chance to do what's right. Her face froze, then cracked. For God's sake, Mom. It wasn't alone. Ethan shifted, finally muttering, She's right, Mom. Stop making it bigger than it is? I looked at him steadily. Bigger than it is? It's my life's savings. Gone. Amy's voice rose, shaking. You chose to give it. Don't twist it now. You think we owe you? You think we're your little debtors? She slammed her palm on the table, dishes rattling. We've decided. We're done. Done with your guilt trips, done with your strings. From now on, we cut ties. You hear me? You're on your own. Her words sliced through the candlelit room like broken glass. Ethan still wouldn't meet my eyes. His silence was worse than shouting. My heart ached, but I didn't flinch. I reached into my apron pocket, pulled out the envelope, and laid it gently on the table. Then you should read this, I said quietly. For a moment they froze. Amy's face flushed red, Ethan's hands curled tight against his lap, and in that tense and dangerous silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, calm, steady strength. Amy snatched the envelope, tearing it open with sharp, jerking motions. Her eyes scanned the lines, legal terms, bank records, the cold weight of truth. Her face went crimson. This is ridiculous, she shouted, crumpling the paper in her fist. You'd take your own children to court? Over money? You'd humiliate us like this? Ethan finally found his voice, loud and shaking. You're our mother. You're supposed to help us, not turn against us. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? Their words crashed against me like waves, but I sat still, watching. The same children I had once nursed through fevers, helped with homework, prayed over while they slept, now glaring at me as if I were their enemy. I let the storm rage, then spoke. My voice was steady, even as my chest ached. No, I said, this isn't about how you look. This is about who you've become. Amy froze, her breath ragged. Ethan swallowed hard. You think I don't know? I continued. Amy, you grew up watching me stretch a paycheck. 22 years as a school secretary, counting every dollar so there'd be enough for your piano lessons, your clothes, your college forms. Ethan, I remember the day you begged me for that secondhand guitar. I worked overtime just to get it. Every sacrifice I made with love. I thought it would teach you gratitude. I leaned forward, my voice soft but cutting. Instead, it taught you to take. The room went silent except for the ticking clock. You saw my generosity as weakness. You mistook my sacrifice for a bottomless well, and now, when I ask for honesty, for fairness, you call it betrayal. Amy shook her head, voice breaking into a scream. You don't understand. Life is harder now. This world isn't like it was for you. We had to take chances. We needed that money. And so you lied, I said. You lied because it was easier than admitting you failed. You lied because you thought your mother would always clean up the mess. But I won't. Not anymore. Their faces hardened, but there was fear behind their eyes. Fear not of me, but of a truth they couldn't escape. I rose slowly from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. My hands were steady, my voice strong. One day, you'll understand. Money can vanish. Businesses can collapse. But the way you treat the ones who love you, that leaves a mark forever. You can rebuild a company. You cannot rebuild trust once it's burned to ash. I paused, looking at them one last time. You've lost more than $60,000 tonight. You've lost the mother who once let you mistake kindness for weakness. From now on, if you want to see me, you'll see me as a woman who values herself. And maybe, just maybe, when you look back on this night, you'll realize what you traded away. I picked up my coat, leaving the turkey half-carved, the pie untouched. Behind me, Amy's sobs cracked through the silence, Ethan whispering her name as though clinging to a lifeline already broken. And for the first time, I stepped out not as their fragile mother, but as a woman who had turned betrayal into dignity. The door closed behind me, sealing in the echo of Amy's sobs and Ethan's suffocating silence. I stood on the porch, drawing a long breath. The November air was sharp against my lungs, but for the first time in months, I could breathe freely. The street stretched ahead under the pale wash of the streetlights. Dry autumn leaves scuttled across the pavement, their brittle whispers following me, as if untying the knots that had bound me for so long. I walked slowly, but each step felt firm, deliberate. My chest still ached. How could it not? I was a mother. Losing the closeness of your children isn't like losing money. It's deeper. It cuts where nothing else can. And yet, beneath that grief, something else was taking root. A new steadiness. Maybe this is freedom, I thought. Not freedom from being their mother, but freedom from manipulation, from the feeling that my only role was to give, to be emptied until nothing remained. As the night air wrapped around me, memories surfaced. Me at 23, a young school secretary, bringing home a paycheck of $800 a month. Stretching every dollar, counting coins for milk, for shoes, for piano lessons. I had survived those years, raising 2 children on little more than faith and discipline. If I built a life out of that, I could rebuild myself now. The street was dark, the air bitter, but inside me a flame stirred. A quiet, unyielding fire. I was no longer the mother who could be twisted and bent. I was Linda Dawson, the woman who had survived scarcity, who had carried a family on her shoulders. And tonight I wasn't losing myself. I was finding her again. Winter had come and gone. By spring the papers were signed, the hearings held. Catherine had guided me through every step with a calm, steady hand. The evidence was undeniable. Amy's company had been dissolved long before she begged me for help. The $60,000 had never touched a business plan. It had bought leather chairs, neon signs, and a shiny car for Ethan. The court didn't jail them, but it didn't excuse them either. Amy was ordered to repay a portion of the money in installments. Ethan was forced to sell the car, the one he once drove so proudly past my little house. The balance left them strapped, carrying debt like a shadow that wouldn't leave. They didn't lose everything, but what they lost was heavier than dollars. Their reputations cracked. Friends grew distant. Family gatherings grew tense, whispers following them like smoke. And me? I found a rhythm again. My mornings began with coffee on the porch, overlooking the small garden I tended with my own hands. I took up volunteering at the local library, helping children with reading, reminding myself of the years I once spent typing letters, organizing school files, living a life built on patience. My world was smaller now, but it was honest, peaceful. I didn't become wealthy from the settlement, but I didn't need to. What I gained was something far greater than money. My voice, my boundary, my dignity. Sometimes, when I knead dough for a pie or pull weeds from the soil, memories of that Thanksgiving return. My heart still aches because a mother's heart never fully stops aching. But I remind myself, love is not measured by how much you can give until you are empty. Love has to be honored or it turns into chains. Amy and Ethan learned that too late, and perhaps one day, when the weight of debt presses harder than pride, they'll understand the truth I tried to give them. As for me, I no longer live in their shadow. I live in the quiet, steady light of my own making. I often think back to that night, the night Amy slammed her hand on the table and screamed, "We've decided to cut ties with you." For a long time, those words echoed in my chest like a wound that would never close. But now I see it differently. That night wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning. I had been betrayed, lied to, and treated as though my life's work was nothing more than a bank account to plunder. Yet, in the very moment they thought they broke me, I found my strength. I slid that letter across the table, and with it, I reclaimed my dignity. Today, I live quietly, freely, on my own terms. My children carry their debts, their reputations dimmed by choices they made. Justice has a way of circling back, slow but certain. And I carry something far greater than money. I carry the proof that even at 70, even as a mother whose heart has been bruised, I can stand tall. I can choose justice. I can choose myself. Because love does not mean surrender, kindness does not mean weakness. And no matter how deep the betrayal, you are never too old, too tired, or too broken to rise, to draw the line and to say, enough. That is the legacy I claim. Not the losses, not the pain, but the freedom of a woman who, even after everything, walked out the door and found herself again. Thanks for listening. If this made you think, or if you've lived through something similar, share your thoughts in the comments. Our channel is a space for sharing tales of the elderly woman and family revenge stories from people who have weathered life's storms. Subscribe for more, because sometimes the deepest form of revenge is simply living on your own terms.